What is up, everyone? Today I want to continue with my reviews about my DKL mount cameras. So join me today on my review of the Kodak Retina Reflex 3. Stay tuned. As I've said before, I love weird old cameras, and the Kodak Retina Reflex 3 is a real beauty. Handsome, if unusual styling, coupled with German craftsmanship and extreme complexity, combined to make this a real one-of-a-kind camera. Kodak began selling cameras under the Retina name in 1934. They were built in Germany by Nagel Camera Works and were made in a variety of styles over the years, with folding, non-folding, rangefinder and viewfinder models available at the different times. They were all well made and featured handsome black leather and chrome finishes. In 1957, Kodak apparently saw the future of 35mm photography coming in the form of the SLR, and they were actually slightly ahead of the curve. They beat the Nikon F and the Canon Flex, which was the first Canon 35mm SLR, and they beat it, Canon and Nikon, 2 years ahead, so well done. Only the Zeiss Icon Contaflex and Pentax Asahi Flex came before it. The idea of a single lens reflex camera is actually much older, but it wasn't applied to small format photography until the 1950s. Anyway, the Retina Reflex is the result of a somewhat unlikely marriage of a compure leaf shutter and a reflex mirror pentaprism, offering eye level through the lens viewing and focusing. The downside to the system is a level of complexity that must have aggravated even the Germans who built the camera, and along with it, a lot of added expense and fragility. It was expensive. If you compare the prices with today's money, it would be something like 1,800 US dollars. So it was expensive, complex and fragile, but it performed well enough, and it was popular enough to be produced until 1966, which was well into the era of modern mechanical SLRs. So that's some of the history. So now, how does it handle? The shape and design of it feel much more like a medium format folder than a typical SLR, but it feels good in your hands. It's heavy and it feels very solid. The controls are smooth and it feels like a precision instrument. The controls do feel a bit awkward. The rewind lever is on the bottom of the camera and the shutter release is on the front. Shutter speeds are controlled via a ring on the front of the camera, and aperture is controlled with a control wheel on the bottom of the camera. Once set, the two can be turned together, which gives you an effective AV and TV modes, depending on whichever you want to use. It has a Gaussian selenium meter built in. visible in the viewfinder or through a window on the top of the camera. The one in mine is still working and is accurate enough to use, though it sticks sometimes. In use it actually works pretty well. Set your shutter speed, then look through the viewfinder and turn the adjustment wheel to find an aperture that will put the meter needle in the middle of its bracket. It's relatively fast for a camera of this vintage. The viewfinder is a nice rectangle with rounded corners and has a split image focusing screen. Mine is yellowed and kind of dim, probably the result of age on the balsam cement in use in the pentaprism. I've heard others say theirs were bright and clear, so I assume that's how they look nude. The frame counter is on the bottom of the camera and, unlike most cameras, counts down instead of up. You have to manually set it to how many frames are on your roll before start shooting. The lenses for this system are excellent German-made Schneider glass, and they were actually one of the strong points of the system. There was a wide angle 28mm 2.8, a 35mm 2.8, a normal 50mm 2.8, a fast 50 1.9. There was, until a photo, 85mm f4, a 135mm f4 and a 200 f4. It's a pretty complete set. Only thing you might ask for is a faster 85mm option for portraits, but really that's about it. I have So those lenses are a really good selling point for this system. They use the decal mount. They are all really well made. They feel nice and solid, and they are completely made from aluminium. And most of them have moving depth of field guides, which is rather unusual. They are really easy to mount and dismount from the camera. You have a release knob on the bottom of the camera. Shooting this camera is fun and different. The viewfinder is a bit on the small side, but definitely usable. Focusing can be difficult because if you have a yellowed viewfinder, which is a little bit hazy, it's quite harsh, but yeah, it's not the fault of the camera. The split image focusing screen works the same way as in any other camera. The controls take a little getting used to, but they are perfectly functional. So, now let's come to the practical part of this video. This example of the Kodak Retina Reflex 3 is the one I have mostly used, but that doesn't mean that it is without its faults. One problem that this example has is that sometimes the shutter times on this camera doesn't work as they should, so they are sometimes a bit off, which means that the film sometimes doesn't get properly exposed, and then you have troubles. Another thing that is problematic with this camera is the shutter mechanism itself. So there is a pre-shutter in here in this camera. You cock it right here, and yes, I have sticky blades of the camera shutter leaves, so let's open it up. Sometimes when I fire this camera, it doesn't properly close again. But yeah, in my opinion, 90% of the pictures that I've got out of this camera were great. I have used this camera for an entire vacation, just this camera and shooting film, no digital, and I had, I think, like 10 pictures out of 200 that were badly exposed because of this problem, so yeah, it's okay. One thing that in my opinion is a little bit weird is the aperture system. So you have this dial down here. When you move it, the aperture system up front moves. I'm not sure, hope you can see that. It's a bit complicated to show. So I move it and the aperture moves as well. But, and that is a big but, sometimes when I turn it, I hope you can see that. Let's refocus. Yeah, so sometimes if I focus, can you see that? The times are moving as well. And that is not what this system should do. Yeah, you can see that? It moves the times with it as well. So you are constantly have to check if the times are still right. And that is a little bit inconvenient in my opinion. But yeah. Another thing is, this camera is unbelievably heavy. If I have worn it around with a camera strap, hanging around the entire day, it's like hanging a brick up as a bracelet. So really harsh stuff. And yeah, you feel a bit awkward, but the people are looking and you get a lot of positive feedback, and the people are asking, why do you do that, and is it worth it, does it even make fun and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a conversation starter. So one thing that I had a few problems with as well was the frame counter, because sometimes it wasn't right at the beginning, and then I had problems with my last pictures because I had to advance it right here and then I got them, but that's a little bit awkward of a system. But yeah. So now let's talk about the positive sides of this camera. I have shooten a lot of old cameras in vacation, and the one that I haven't had nearly any problems with was this camera. After getting used to this aperture system with this wheel, which is really a bit awkward, and then checking again if your timers are still right, it's really nice. The viewfinder is really bright. There are no specks of dust in there. The light meter works conveniently and it works well. For most people, the shuttlecock sits in a quite unusual way, but I find it really convenient. I think I'm quite fast with this. So I think that is not as bad of a design idea as it seems. It really works quite well. You take your camera like that, and then you take your hand like so, cock it, press it, cock it, press it, cock it, press it. Really convenient. And there it happened again. There you go. Blades that don't go in the full length. Another thing that is quite awkward with those cameras is those lenses. So they are really small. You align them by the red dot, so I have one red dot here and one right here. You align them and then you twist them. And this lens is quite a good example because it's really not that bad, because for focusing you have this black dot around here which makes it usable like the Leica M lenses, which most of them also have this lever, so that's not that bad. But there are lenses that are the same size and you don't have this focusing ring, and then it's really fiddly. It's because you're rubbing against the wall and it's not really turning and you're really not that fast. With this help, it's really not bad. I'm really happy about it. So, now let's come to a conclusion. In my opinion, this camera is a great piece of tech. If it's in good order and you want to have one of the highly advanced cameras of the 60s, then there is no way around this camera. But there are a few downsides that you have to address. I don't like the aperture control wheel down here. I'm not a big fan of that. By the way, it's really close to the lens detachable mechanism. I haven't had any problems with that, but there could be an accident. What I really do like is the shutter mechanism, because the film advancer works really fast and is quite convenient. So it's a good usable camera that gives you amazing results if you're going to learn how to use it properly, and you will get quite fast with it if you do shoot a lot with it. So it's a really convenient piece of tech, but I have to give you a few advices to buy. you have to be a bit lucky with these cameras. A lot of them have bad viewfinders where there's a lot of dust and stuff, and that really ruins the way you shoot with this camera, so the experience will be not as good. Another thing that you have to look out for is with this synchro compure. That can make you a lot of trouble. I had a few cameras where the times weren't working at all, so they were just shooting at 1/60th of a second, even if you pull it up to a 500th. So the times can go badly, and sometimes the leaf shutter has a mind of its own and stays half open and stuff like that. You have to look into this camera a bit, but if you find a good example and you're willing to take a bit of time to learn how to shoot this, then those lenses in combination with this camera will get you amazing results. Really nice, and I can't really explain to you how I like it. Really good. I enjoyed it really much, and yeah. So thank you very much for watching this review, and goodbye.